Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show that asks you to pull out your TTRPG books, pull out your chairs, and join us at the table. We have a very special guest today. Before we get into that, quick heads up, we are going to be talking today about East Asian history, culture, and representation because it absolutely matters. We're going to be talking about that kind of in general as a whole, and of course with TTRPG that we know and love so much. And I'm going to do my introduction and then turn the show over to our amazing guest and, of course, my man, Mr. Michael Powell. My name is PJ McGaw. You can find me all over the internet at pj.mcgaw, Facebook, Instagram, internet. Wow, we're off to a great start. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Come find me. Let's have a good time. And without further ado, Mr. Michael Powell, should we turn it over to you or should we turn to our amazing special guest?
You know what? Let's turn into our amazing special guests first.
Absolutely.
Everybody knows me already.
Oh my god. Hi guys. So I am Eunice. I also go by Yaya, and you can find me on social media as JadePalaceYaYa or My Hamachi Designs, where I do designs for pets and their owners.
Very, very nice. And of course, take us home, Mr. Michael Powell. Tell us who you are and where we can find you on that sweet, sweet internet.
Well, y'all know me. I'm Michael Powell, and you can find me all over the internet on my social medias, which are at Mr. Kapow. That's MrKapao.
Very, very nice. So yeah, once again, I want to make sure I vocally put this out there that today's episode is going to specifically cover East Asian history, culture, because one of our major goals, and of course we all discussed this before going on, is that Asia is not a monolith. There are many different groups, cultures, thousands of years of history, culture, fashion, and you know, I mean, we have Americans, people who look like this. We have to step in and admit we got it wrong a lot. A lot of it was bad. So without further ado, I'm going to shut my mouth, maybe ask a few questions here and there, but I'm going to get my old handy dandy notebook and listen. So I guess really fast, what are some things about being an Asian creator that's awesome that you could pull from history, from your culture, and what are some things that maybe you struggle with and would like to see change? I know it's a loaded question. Take your time. We have 2 hours.
All right. Well, one of the things I want to start off with first is, as I said before, we're focusing mainly on East Asian culture representation here on this episode, because when you look at the big picture of Asia, Eunice and I'm just going to say, we represent a very small demographic of Asian representation, you know. But I still feel a conversation about this following topic, it has to be discussed, especially these days, and hopefully this will at least get the ball rolling, you know. I mean, if you have an audience, you have a responsibility to use it as well.
No, completely agree. As like Michael said, like for me, I usually more identify as being Taiwanese Chinese, because my family, even though like my mom and dad were born in Taiwan, they were raised in Taiwan, so they're culturally Taiwanese. But in Chinese culture, we actually go by the father. Like, you know, if your father is this ethnicity, then you're this ethnicity. So both of my parents' dads were from China. On my maternal side, my grandpa is from Shandong, which is in north, and my dad's side is from Jiangsu, which is it's like mid-south-ish area. And that's the thing. It's a very small representation of the whole Asian culture. Mm-hmm. But also on my side, like I'm also part Vietnamese because of my grandmother. Like from my grandmother on my mother's, it's so complicated. But my mother on my grandmother's side is she's Hainanese, but she's also mixed with Vietnamese from her dad, and she grew up in Vietnam. So I grew up very like culturally Vietnamese as well. Like our whole family, no joke, we have like mostly it's Chinese food and Vietnamese food. Like this is a very Vietnamese thing, but we have nuoc mum in the fridge all the time, and nuoc mum is fish sauce. We can't live without fish sauce. All our cooking, everything, it's all like a spoonful of fish sauce or like a bottle of fish sauce. And yeah, so there's just like that. Just even in my family alone has so many representations of different Asian cultures. I speak different dialects of Chinese, and that's what I always hate. People are like, oh, do you speak Chinese? And I'm like, which one? I know 3.
Building off of what Eunice here said, and also what I previously said is, and also what PJ also previously said, all of us previously said, one of the hallmarks of Asian representation, especially also in TTRPGs, is it tends to get melded into this kind of a blend or a blob, with the bulk of it usually being Chinese and Japanese. And this has been an overused trope as a whole. And like I said, as BJ said before, China and Japan are not a monolith, and they do not represent all of Asia. Asia is big, really big, with its own different cultures and different ethnicities and all that stuff, and history.
Yep, that's exactly it. And as PJ said, like China, we have, what was I believe it's 4,000 years of written history, at least 8,000 years of oral history. We are one of the oldest surviving civilizations. And that's the thing. It's like, and to see that every time Asian like representation in games, it's not even like a distinction in our own history. It's just like a mismatch of like, oh, what looks Asian, what looks
Aesthetic.
Oh god, I hate this word. What looks Oriental?
That's oh god. I hate that term.
I know, but I think that's the perfect term to put it. It's not Asian.
Yeah.
It's Oriental, and that's the thing. Even as like we as a society have progressed to know that not to use that word, but the idea of it hasn't progressed at all.
Yeah.
It's still the same representation with a different title.
Yeah, I really like that you actually brought this up, because I was trying to figure out how are we going to bring this up, because, yeah. Once again, Oriental is usually a term to describe a rug. It should not be used to describe people.
People.
Yeah.
I'm not a rug.
Yeah, but at least for me, I will be using that outdated and fairly problematic term here. And when I do, it's to illustrate a point, and that point is, that term is, well, outdated and problematic.
Yes, exactly. It's ridiculous.
And also, I want to say, since we are mainly kind of a stream show, and we do interact with our audience, if anybody in chat has any questions they want to ask, or something they want to discuss, please do, and we'll try our best to get to them, but also be respectful of your questions and comments and stuff.
Yeah, and I'll say I'm doing Overwatch as well as Michael. So we want to say that not only are we opening up this door to be respectful to you, but we expect and demand that you be respectful back to us. And most people that are in this chat, they seem pretty on the level. When we opened up a few episodes ago, hashtag Stop Asian Hate, y'all backed it, and we respect that, and we hope to continue seeing that. But if there's anyone here for the first time that thinks, no, this is the time I'm going to make a funny racial quip, I got the door in the band hammer, mother trucker.
Yeah.
Play me. Let's see what happens.
You know what? Let's jump into chat really quick for a little bit, because we got some posts things made. I'm just gonna read them out real quick, okay? Really quick. Hey, what's up, Maynard and Mr. Mihara and Avenging Penguin? We have Sculpts here. Posted, Def, excited to hear from you folks. Avoiding problematic or classically misrepresented content feels like erasure, but also of course, you don't want to appropriate. I hate to avoid representation out of fear of appropriation, but how do you balance that? That's a great question.
Yeah, as someone who's writing and world building, I would also love to know your guys' thoughts on that. Because I feel like, as a white guy, you want to do your best to uplift voices, but the problem is you understand that your well that you can pull from is vastly tiny, And this is why I think this is such a great conversation, because like if you create a world where it only represents traditionally Eurocentric fantasy, then you just take the entire conversation back 30 years. But then if you do it wrong going forward, you also take the conversation back to 30 years to a little atrocity that Michael mentioned previously. I'm not going to bring it up unless he does, and then I'm just going to crap on it from a great height.
I think I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about, and yes, we are gonna go there.
We should. We absolutely should. We have to put the sins on the table. But I think at the same time, I want to pair that with, it's not perfect, but the slow steps that we're kind of doing to intelligently fix it. And I will pull from the book if need be to prove that it's not great, but it's better. Um, so starting with the question, how do you guys feel about, for example, in this case, Chinese or Vietnamese culture, history, food, fashion, your upbringing being presented with inclusion representation in TTRPG and how that can be accomplished? Now, obviously, you don't speak for the entirety of your people, but your voice still needs to be heard. So understand, giving that representation in TTRPG, media, movies, video games, without making it appropriation.
Do you want to take the lead on this one, Eunice, or do you want me to?
I think it's just one word. It's a one-word answer, and that's respect.
Yeah.
Appreciation is fine. Appreciation is great. Like I love seeing people like, okay, let's just say like, okay, my always go to example is food because I love food.
Same.
Right, I love to eat. Oh my god, my mom just made radish cakes, loboko. Anyways, but that's the thing. It's respect. Like, I don't know if you grew up like this, Michael, but like I would bring. It's always the same example. I would bring lunch to school, and people will go, "Oh my god, what is that? Ew, ew! It looks like dog food. It smells weird."
Oh yeah, I've been there. It got to a point where, honestly, I had discussions and with my family and everything, and I grew up in an area where I want to say, God, one of 5 other Asian kids. So it got to the point where, you know what, Mom, just give me $1.25. I'm just gonna buy the school lunch.
And see, that's like a whole issue in itself. It becomes like, especially like for us as like, Michael, were you born in America or are you ABC?
Taiwan.
Oh, you're right. Oh, Taiwan.
Yeah, Taiwanese as well.
I'm sorry. I
was born on vacation.
I will speak Mandarin. Just a heads up. I will speak Mandarin, and I'll try to translate if I remember. But that my go-to language is Mandarin. Anyways, the thing is like I think it's really important for people who are like born in America like me. It's like that whole idea. It becomes like we become ashamed of our own culture and the thing is, you know what really sucks? I grew up in an area where 90% of the population were Asian, and I still got that reaction from other ethnicity kids, and it's crazy. And that's the thing, it all comes, and then now of course like now everyone's like, oh my god, I love boba, oh my god, I love Ding Tai Fung, oh my god. It's like, and it's that whole thing. It's just respect. You can appreciate it, but also respect the culture that is behind everything. Like, and also like if you make a mistake, if someone calls you out on it, then just learn from it and move on.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like,
don't. A lot of people do this, and every time they do this, I just shake my head, mainly for the fact that, oh man, you just, why did you do that? Like, they take it as a front, and they feel like we're attacking them.
Yes.
And they take it personally. And they're like,
yes.
no, I'm not like that. We're not saying that you're like that, but the situation is kind of like that.
Yeah, and then like that's the thing. Like, take it, be all like, I'm sorry. As long as like I'm sorry, I'll learn from it and go on from here. It's just that easy. It's not that hard. And as I said, like the basic thing is respect. And then like I guess going back to like the topic, like Michael, I sent you like a link with like, you know, the little figures.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
understand like so like a lot of people are doing it now. They're like doing Asian culture, like, you know, like aesthetic like figures and like for tabletop gaming. And it's great. I understand where they're coming from, but it still creates a problem that it's all lumped together. Did you see the
Oh yeah,
pictures
I
of
saw.
it?
I saw it. It was it was a amalgamation of both Chinese and
Chinese and
Japanese.
Japanese.
Yeah, you have what is it? Chinese like soldiers and like the traditional Chinese. I want to say Han
Hmm.
armor or
It's
something.
very Han. Yeah,
Very
it's
Han
very
armor,
Han.
and then with samurais. Like
Yeah.
they're
Oh.
two very
Did,
different
did they
things.
not put them together and realize
They put it
the
together. Yeah.
armor profile was completely different?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you want to know the funny thing is, okay, so it's like a very fine line though, because it's historically most of the Japanese culture they have now, it's actually influenced by China during the Tang Dynasty. Because during the Tang Dynasty, it was when Japan and China had the best relationship in history.
Mm-hmm.
And so during that time, a lot of Japanese ambassadors did come to China. They were like, you know, working with like, you know, they were working with the royalty and they saw a lot of things. And a lot of the stuff that you have in Japan now is actually very Chinese inspired. The kimono of Japan culture is actually inspired by like Chinese da shan, which is the long sleeve robes.
Mm-hmm.
You have, what was I think? Architecture. It's really funny because there was a time that in China, we lost a lot of our architecture during like war. It's been thousands of years. You're gonna lose a lot of things. We lost a lot of architecture. We lost a lot of like information how to build things. You know where they went? They went to Japan because Japan had all of the blueprints still from that time. They looked at their architecture and they brought it back to China to build like how like Chang'an used to look like back during the Tang Dynasty.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's interesting. It's a weird thing, but it doesn't mean it's still the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I kind of want to say like one of the best examples of modern day that did well with this is Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. And yes, before anyone says anything, I do know who the creators of the series are. I know they're not Asian. I know this. Okay.
That's exactly what you know. That's what's the thing that made Avatar different from everything else was respect. They respected the culture.
Yeah.
They researched the culture, and they portrayed it in a way that wasn't stereotyped.
Yeah. I really like what while we're in an obviously Asian-inspired setting, each of the 4 different nations clearly has their own culture. Like, the Earth Kingdom is definitely different from the Water Tribes. They have their own heroes, their villains, their bad guys, their good guys. It runs the whole gamut. Like, I think I saw this post, forgot where, but somebody made the comparison. Fire Nation is basically Japan and Korea.
No,
Water
actually, it's supposed to be
Nation,
Japan and China.
actually, yes, but I also can see Japanese and Korea too, though.
A little bit. It's
yeah.
supposed to be It's supposed to represent the colonization eras of Japan and China, and But anyways, go on.
The Water Nation, Pacific Islander, and Inuit.
Yes.
The Earth Nation, China and Southeast Asia.
Yes.
The Air Nation, Nepal and Central Asia. And then when you go to Legend of Korra, Republic City, which is Singapore and Hong Kong. Yeah. So.
But that's also the thing with it. It's like, even though it's very, at the same time, it's still like ambiguous enough that like, it's not, but at the same time, I don't know how to say it. It's like weird. It's like ambiguous, but it has its own characters that is not disrespectful. I guess like that's the only way I could put it.
They're not rubbing your face in it, but when you're looking at it and you're like, and you actually do know these cultures are like, you're able to draw the parallels. You're like, it's like that, I call it the aha factor, You don't realize it, but then you're thinking about it for a little bit like, aha. I love those moments, and
Yeah.
This is actually a very good, I guess, place to ask this question because I've been wondering this the whole time. Just because as a creator, an outside creator, what respect is such a powerful word. So I guess my question is, what does respect feel like or look like for you individually when it comes to seeing like Avatar or Shang, I'm butchering it.
Oh, that new movie that's coming out,
Right?
神奇.
Shang, Shang,
神奇, okay, there. Okay, I think Michael and I talked about there's actually
Yeah.
no Mandarin equivalent, and that's
No,
the
there
problem.
isn't.
is it is
It's
it
like it
just
could be even Shang-Chi.
I was gonna say, is it just like white guys going, "What sounds like a Chinese name?" I
Um,
know.
if we want to go into that, okay. You know what? I'm gonna drop some comic book knowledge because
Do it.
honestly, one of the things that first and foremost with me is comic books. Shang-Chi, I'm gonna call him. That's what I'm gonna call him because that's how I always read it. Oh God, he is in the original comics the son of Fu Manchu.
That's right. And he
Yeah.
even had the stereotypical mustache, didn't he, Fu Manchu?
Yeah. It's a
Ooh.
product of oh God, I want to say like late 70s, 80s, and it factors into that whole back in that time Orientalist kind of mysticism, you know.
Oh
It
yeah.
was it
Oh
was
god.
that it was that horrible time where all the terrible propaganda writers from World War II
Hmm.
basically never got corrected and went, "We can keep doing this.
Yeah.
It's fine."
Using straight up yellow face and like slanted eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Ah.
yeah, I want to, and I think that really hammers why this question, at least for me, maybe some of the chat is important. What does respect look like? What does respect feel like for you, for both of you individually? Obviously, again, you can't speak for the entire 12,000 years of Chinese history and culture, and that's just what we have written and orally spoken. So what does it look and feel like? Is it attention to detail? Is it normalcy? What does it look and feel like for you?
I think
Michael, do you want to go first?
yeah, sure. I think at least for me, it's a combination of pretty much everything you just said. You know, um, let's see, because I'm looking at my notes and I know I have a lot. I wrote a lot. I ended up writing a lot of notes. I'm probably only going to get to a quarter of these notes
Oh, same.
because yeah. Um, but anyway, while I'm going through it, Eunice, you want to take this?
Okay, yeah, sure. So, like, yes, definitely, I think it's just like the portrayal. Like, but at the same time, it's not like so heavily emphasized. Like the whole like don't have someone like, oh my god, this person is from like China, or like it's like just have the person have something, like research it to the point that you understand what you're trying to portray, but don't like overly emphasize that whole like, oh my god, see, this is like, don't I okay, this is so bad, but I always hate like, oh my god, like, look at this representation in our new movie, and I'm just like,
Mm.
if you have to announce that you guys are having representation, then it's not progress at all. It's still you're trying to appease people.
It's that kind
I
of virtue signaling, signposting, like, look
Yeah.
how woke we are. Then you're not
Yes.
woke.
Oh
Hmm.
Then
my
you're not woke.
god.
It's
Okay.
performative. Performative. I
Yes.
actually had a
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you.
huge discussion about that with a friend the other day about how people are taking a lot of this these days as a way to be just performative with their,
Yeah.
raising their flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It
Like.
it really has kind of felt like that with all the social media
mhm.
grandstanding, and where it's like you see like the 30, 40 different filters to put on your
Mhm.
status photo. You get like all the like the 20 billion different stickers and hashtags. And hashtags are a powerful way for social media tools to help
Mhm.
enlightenment across the zeitgeist. But like, does it feel pedantic and patronizing after a while?
Sometimes,
Yes.
yeah,
Oh,
sometimes it does. A lot of times, a
yes.
lot of times.
Oh
But
my god.
I want to say, like going back to what we were talking about, like usually when I see people who look like me in games, I tend to assume it's some sort of Orientalist fantasy. The character usually falls into a lot of these common tropes of either being emotionally repressed, have some sort of fixation on some personal code of honor, or be some mystical and exotic to the extent that no one understands their foreign ways, or soft-spoken and submissive, or even have this gets me, an obsession with swords, usually some sort of katana, or maybe a master of the martial arts, the Eastern martial arts. And
Oh my god, I'm so glad you brought this up. I actually had a whole section of my notes on this as well.
oh yeah,
Let's-
oh yeah.
Let's talk about it. Let's put it on the
Yeah, talk
table
about it.
because I want
Okay.
to learn.
No, that's the thing. As Michael said, usually when you see like an Asian culture, an Asian person, you especially let's go with Asian male first. Either they're a monk, super scrawny, and like super emasculated for some reason. They're always like, or the samurai trope, like lone hero, like quiet. It's like, and then like for
Breathing
some
more than
reason they
Batman.
always. Oh, that's no, but for some reason they always have Asian people speaking in poems or haikus.
Mhm.
And okay, poetry is important in Chinese culture. It's very important. We have this Tang Si 300 which is the 300 poems of the Tang Dynasty. Poetry is actually a very important art form.
Yes.
But the problem is normal people can't come up with poems by themselves in the spot because that's actually really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. In
You know,
Chinese
honestly,
culture,
I have so
go
much
ahead.
respect for rappers who can like pop,
Oh, yeah, that's
launch
it.
out a rhyme just right out without any,
Yeah, absolutely. It's what's interesting about the speaking in a haiku thing. It kind of, and please correct me if I'm wrong. It feels like it circles back to that horrible O word, where it kind of it removes a sense of your own personal human identity. It kind of makes you
it
a trope.
dehumanizes you.
Yeah,
it does.
it's almost reductive in a sense. Like, oh, you're just so wise and so unknowable. Look at you talking in rhyme all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
what? You got a big ass bill too. What are you talking about?
Building on what Eunice said earlier, saying that about hypermasculinization, I kind of wanted to say, I want to kind of just disagree there a little bit. I want to say a lot of the Asian male representation that I've seen tends to be either effeminate or you're just a straight up comedic relief when it comes to Asian
that's
males.
it. No, I agree. I actually agree there too. But like that's the thing. Like, okay, I understand this might actually come from like Chinese media itself, because if you look at a lot of Chinese dramas and that kind of stuff, the guys are like pretty. That's the thing. They're very pretty. But that's the thing about Asian culture. Like we tend to be like we do have softer features compared to those of the Western like people. I guess that's the only way I can say it. We do have softer features. That is the thing. But the thing is, I don't know. It's always like they're never portrayed as a hero. But that's the thing in Chinese culture. Even though the males look very beautiful, very feminine, but the thing is they're still heroes. They're still strong. They still learn. They still have to like defeat the ultimate baddie. But that's not what you see in Western culture. It's basically, it's like they Photoshop a book cover onto like the thing, but not knowing the actual information inside it. And I think, okay, so I always use that new Mulan movie, the 2020 Liu Yifei Mulan movie, as the perfect example of trying to appease Asian people and Asian culture, but not having the body of it. Usually I like using the example, it is like a cup of water with food coloring in it. It looks really pretty, but there's no taste to it. And that's the thing. It's like, I remember when that Mulan movie came out, they were like super like, oh my God, it's Chinese culture. They took out Mushu, the audacity. They took out Mushu. But they took out Mushu because, it wasn't culturally appropriate. They took out the singing because, we want a serious Mulan that's more historically accurate, which is always what got me. They really pushed that movie saying that it was culturally and historically accurate. After watching it, I actually have a video on my YouTube channel that I spent 30 minutes just like going like list by list of what went wrong in that movie. And that's the thing.
Oh, no, I'm interrupting you. Please continue.
But that's the thing. That's like what a lot of I see representation in Western culture is. It's pretty, it's nice, but there's no body to it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And like, yeah.
And also, I also want to make sure that we're not just, just pushing out just negativity or anything like that.
Yeah.
A lot of the Asian presenting medias, games, and stuff that I've been enjoying a lot these days, usually subvert these Asian stereotypes and kind of deconstructs them, especially with characters which in turn kind of inspires my own projects and works. Stuff like that. That's really, like, example, my character Rufa on Edge of Legends. He's honestly not your stereotypical, Asian hero that you see in, I guess you could say, the Western market. He's, I'm trying to portray him as kind of a good, he's a balance point, really, he could be masculine, but he could be a feminine as well. He has, he has, we haven't gone there yet, but like a background that's a certain way compared to what his current life is. And I'm hoping to use him. I basically built him to act as a bridge, with tropes and stereotypes, really.
Yeah.
No, that sounds. Oh, go ahead.
Please continue. Please continue.
Go.
Okay. I don't want to pat myself on the back for anything. So what I'll do instead is I'll go read the chat, because I think we just get some interesting questions in the chat that may also add. Scups says, this is about the aha factor I mentioned earlier, Michael, for the spot of representation. Is the aha factor the sweet spot of representation, in addition to not just tokenizing or approaching representation for representation's sake? Are active attempts to be preemptively, hate the way this sounds, but diverse? Put simply, would you prefer people research and carefully drive for aha in the active sense, or does that also feel like it's just patronizing?
Honestly, I'm a firm believer of if you do your research and you're respectful about it, and you're honestly not patronizing anything, yeah, just, go for it. I want to see that. That's something that's really exciting for me. And if I could draw like the parallels, the aha factor, in your work, I read into a lot of things. I've had discussions with PJ here before where we discussed, like, I think you told me, like, Michael, you're being a little too subtle about this.
But you have really great character stuff and story work, and that's a problem with show and don't tell media, is that sometimes, and I think this might be also some of the bumps in the road with the dialogue, because I think, as you've told me, like, there is that double talk, that courtly speak, the way that things are said without being said. And let me tell you, as someone who eats a lot of cheeseburgers, you got to be shotgun obvious sometimes. It's like, did he insult me? I don't know. Huh. And that's kind of, I think, the demographic that is really wanting to learn, so we can better, like, respect that conversation. I have a weird question.
Yeah.
Putting this out there. So with fantasy, you have tropes such as classes, right? Obviously, you have the monk, and that's a problem in its own way. But then you have other classes. Like, for example, the paladin. Now, the paladin, of course, is this really weird Arthurian disambiguation of, I believe, a Muslim knight that was then turned into, like, the Arthurian knight, right? Western
Yeah.
or the Eurocentric romanticization.
Lancelot.
Bingo. And that's kind of where it all stems from. We took it from someplace else. We put a new package on it. It's what white people love to do. But now my question is though, they're always seen as heroic, right? Like the Luke Skywalker, the Obi-Wan. Would you feel like that's something you want to see in Asian paladin? Or do you want to see an Asian something else equal to that? Obviously, without hitting that samurai trope at all.
You know what, Eunice? I would actually really like to hear your take on this.
I think I personally would actually like to see different because just like you said, it's like a repackage and then like same like from something else. And I think that's a little bit different, especially with Asian cultures, because the culture is so different in itself. I think personally creating new classes in order to what's that word? Like creating new classes as a representation, I feel like it's better. So you're not just recycling. You're not, because when you put something into a pre-existing class it feels like a little bit you're stereotyping in order to put them into the existing class. But when you create a new class that, I don't want to say cater, but it's like which works around a particular culture, maybe not even just Chinese culture, like, you know, like just like as I said, like Southeast culture and East Asian culture are completely different. So when you have like different classes in order to, again, I don't want to say cater, but like, you know, work with the specific cultures, I personally think that's more important, because that's when you have like a more understanding of what this thing is instead of just a pre-existing label that creates a whole new list of stereotypes and people who probably never encountered it before.
Okay.
Yeah. I recently, a while back, this weekend, I was doing research on this because I wanted to be on my, A game. I started listening to this podcast. It's called Asian Represents, and it's very informative. It's kind of basically, I guess you could say, that podcast kind of inspires this video. And one of the things that they said in one of their videos where they went and deconstructed, went through the old school 80s advanced Dungeons and Dragons Oriental Adventures, one of the things that kind of stood out to me is that book with its own classes, and then with your traditional D&D classes like Fighter, Ranger, Thief, and all that stuff. They created a whole new line of classes for Oriental Adventures. And they said that, yeah, if you're going to play in this setting, use these classes. And when you put them side by side with each other, all the classes on the Oriental Adventures were mechanically weaker than its counterpart. Constantly kind of a otherness,
Yeah. Kind of playing into that
lesser.
That disgusting lesserism. Because I know that, like, and it's always weird with fantasies because it speaks to a hyperbolic escapism. And I know that, like, with Pathfinder and D&D, they've kept the ninja class, they've kept the samurai class. Of course, now the samurai is more of an archetype and of a fighter type. And monks have been in since AD&D. I lost the plot on this point in question, but it's something that I guess they continue to do, and I guess it comes down to, like, what at that point do you want those classes to be the same power variant? Like, is the ninja just a reskin of a rogue? Is a samurai the reskin of a fighter? Are they entirely different, or are they even necessary? Can you just say, I'm a Japanese fighter? My story is being the oldest son of, like, a local noble gentry. I took up the blade to, like, try to protect my land. I'm a samurai, but that's just my culture and my story. On paper, I'm just a fighter. I don't know. What's the approach do you feel is better for that kind of thing? And this goes to everyone in the chat, please, or everyone in the Zoom call. Please tell me how you feel about that.
Eunice, what do you think?
Okay, so this is like where my ignorance is going to show. I've actually never played tabletop gaming, so I'm not as I try to get into it. I actually honestly try to get into it. I just never had time or friends. Maybe now this will change.
Maybe we can
Yeah,
do
maybe.
a one shot, PJ.
Hey,
Hey,
yeah.
I'm down. I'm down. I just asked
You
that
gotta teach
Michael
me.
run that one shot because I don't want to
But
be like,
you gotta
welcome to
you gotta
not
teach me from
China.
scratch though. You gotta teach me from scratch though. But anyways, but I see that's the thing. I think like maybe the idea maybe don't have what's that like like specific names like you say like fighter samurai. Why do you need the term samurai? Like I just said, like why not if you want to have classes, then just have like I guess it is an archetype, isn't it? Just like the archetype is like I just said like fighter, thief. Like why does a ninja have like why is a ninja or something like that? It's like because ninja and samurai are such cultural like figures. It's Japanese.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like why does those have to be a trope? I personally feel like you should just keep like the basic like like archetype and then like span on to like as PJ said, have your own backstory to it. I think that's actually better.
I totally agree because one of the things I really liked about Pathfinder Second Edition is how they did their backgrounds. I feel Samurai honestly could be its own background, and then you take the mechanics of the Samurai archetype abilities and throw them into the fighter's battle maneuver set, and just work it like that. So yeah, their background is that they're a samurai, but I guess your class features mechanically, you're still a fighter. And same with ninja. It could be the ninja is basically a trope of a thief, right? Well, not a trope of a
That in
thief, a
itself
trope
is
of a rogue. Actually, that sounds better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but
And also
also,
monk. Yeah, I agree with you, PJ. Don't call him a monk. Just call him a martial artist or something. Like
yeah, pugilist.
a
Because
pugilist. Yeah.
because one of the things I think is always cool, having spent a lot of my years learning combat, is that fighting is a part of the culture. Anywhere you go, there's an art that speaks to the people that had to use and learn this art for self-defense in a chaotic world. Everyone has a different one, and it can be as something as simple as good old-fashioned sport boxing with the good old way the 1, 2, 3, 4, Krav Maga, Farmer Masad, or someone who gave up their entire lives to go to a Shaolin temple and learn their culture's way of combat, discipline, meditation, and religion, which I think is also a huge part that needs to be represented. And I think you make a very good point. Like I think they stripped the cultural aspect. Because here's the weird thing. I've talked to people about monks, dudes like this, and they're like, how come the monk doesn't look like the European monk who's out of shape and has the tonsured hair, the Friar Tuck? And I'm like, dude, now I want to see Friar Tuck do train style. That would be dope.
That would be really cool. And like I said, doesn't a monk sound more like a background that someone has rather than a class?
Yeah.
Million%.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like with monks, it's always like representing Shaolin monks. I'm like Shaolin Temple is only one of its like basic kind. Like usually monks in like Asia don't know kung fu. You know what they do? They spend their days meditating and not eating. No joke. They're and that's in itself. It's like you see monk and you think, oh my god, Shaolin monk, and it becomes again, it's an old stereotype that is keep on being portrayed that doesn't change no matter what you do. So which is like
I want to go back and chat a little bit. Reap Psyche posted because I think it also relates to here a little bit, that creepy remnant of colonization obsession where white/British/Western, the men have more feminine because patriarchy dictates the less stereotypically masculine men are less threatening to white men's latent obsession with conquering.
I learned this in college.
This was probably a very easy question, but I think it is important to answer just to reinforce it. Scubs in the chat. I'll do it. I'll do the quick and dirty version. Basically, accents. Because being the Eurocentric version, like it's okay to be like, I use a Scottish accent for his character. He's a dwarf, so clearly he's got to be some form of Scottish. Or like, oh yes, I come from high society, so clearly I'm posh English. And then if you have NPCs, characters who fill out a rich East Asian world, and respect to Southeast Asian, Pacific Islanders, everywhere else, Southeast Asian, like, do you do the accents? Now, my stance is, even if I could do the accent 1,000% correct, it doesn't feel respectful coming from me. So, like, for example, we have African characters in the World of Edge of Legend, and as a principle, I don't do the accent. But this does, I think, beg some reinforcement, yes or no, accents. Even if you can make them as respectful as possible, do them, don't, just kind of signpost, hey, this character's using an Asian accent, I'm clearly not going to do that. How do you feel?
Eunice?
Accents are such a weird gray area. It definitely is a very... You can dispute this as, like, forever, because it's just... There is no white or black answer, unfortunately. Because the thing is, in people who don't speak, Chinese speakers or Mandarin speakers who don't speak English, when they do speak English, there is definitely an accent. It's very much obvious, like, especially, oh my God, like, that's why I'm, like, trying to teach, like, people to stop. So, but, like, it's weird because, like, when you have, like, a character in, like, a thing, and then, like, they obviously aren't living in a Western realm, and if they're not going to speak perfect English. They're not going to speak, like, perfect pronunciation. But it's just, I just said, this one's a little hard for me because I think, okay, here, actually, one of my favorite games is Fallout 4. And then there's a quest where you go to, I think it's a submarine, and there's, like, a Chinese submarine, and you talk to the ghoul who used to be, like, a Chinese dude. I think, like, when you have an accent that is not, like, stereotyping, like the oh God, I actually can't even do really a Chinese accent. It's like, the whole, like, Asian mom, okay, the Asian mom accent. As long as you're not using, like, those Asian mom, like, old lady accents, I think it's fine, as long as you're not doing it so strongly that it's really obvious. If, like, the thing is, when I speak English, I actually sometimes have a weird accent as well because Mandarin was my first language. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. Like, as long as you have something that's, like, it's not purposely pointed out, it's not purposely emphasized, I think it's okay. Again, it's a whole respect kind of thing. I
think for me is, don't make your characters or NPCs a cultural caricature of a stereotype. Mm-hmm. And honestly, if someone needs to reach out and ask, hey, is this racist? Honestly, if you gotta ask, 80% of the time it is.
So a lot of times I'm asking just because I'm just like, okay, that's what check in. Is everything okay? Yeah? No? Okay.
See, that's where the 20% comes from.
Yeah.
I mean, it never hurts to ask because what if it is and everyone's like, you know what? It's bad, but it's not the worst. I'll take it on the chin. Yeah. It's coming from a place of love. Mm-hmm. If it's coming from a place of love, then I'm sure out of love they'll fix it or at least make notes.
I mean, or you can honestly kind of create your own. Like, I do use a voice when I play Rufa, but what I did is kind of took elements from a lot of different things to kind of create my own hodgepodge. What I think it would be kind of a cosmopolitan voice. Like tell me if this is bad. Oh, my friend, it's good to see you. No. It is not perhaps a wise decision to make. Like, would you see that as offensive or a stereotype?
No, I don't think so.
And also, can you pin down what that accent really is?
Exactly. I think that's the important thing. It's ambiguous to the point that it's not a stereotype. Mm-hmm. And if you want to stay away from accents, there is actually a really good way, vocabulary, because there are some words in different cultures that don't exist.
Yeah.
And then I think it's a way to like literal translations and have it like, oh, what is that? And then like maybe try to explain it. But basically, I think vocabulary can be a good patch for accents. Like, and I always say like, yeah, Chinese people, we don't speak in poems, but we actually do use a lot of idioms. There's one idiom I always love to use because it's an insult. It's called 井底之蛙, which means a frog in a well. And then if I tell you right now, a frog in a well, you guys are probably like, what the heck, right? The idiom actually says, this idiom actually represents, so basically a frog that lives in the well only lives in the well. He sees that patch of sky and he thinks that's the whole world, ignorant to the whole an actual universe around it. But because he spends his whole life in that well, he thinks the whole world is that sky, and he thinks he knows everything just because he has that sky. And basically that's an idiom to ignorance. Usually, so that's I'm like, oh my god, this person is like a frog in a well. It's me calling them dumb.
Kind of building on that, yeah, it's the age of the internet where we have tons of resources at our fingertips for us to get access and make use of. It's not that hard to do the homework.
Yeah.
And hey, we're all geeks and nerds. We're obsessive about this kind of stuff already.
Exactly.
Really, really quick, I want to ask, so vocabulary, first of all, I think that is a beautiful idea to use vocabulary, as you said, a really good patch for accents, because representation is key. Language is part of representation. All of that is tantamount to creating a world where Southeast, and East Asian heroes are being seen just as prevalent as Lancelot on his horse and screwing his best friend's wife. So my thing is this. So words, metaphors, idioms, all that beautiful. When you say words, do you mean like specific words, like cultural ideal words, or the actual language? Like, would you want to see, say, a lady with badass armor and this awesome spear riding on a horse, and a demon, just horrible twisted demon pops up, and she says in one of the many different Chinese languages and dialects, a really awesome like battle cry. Her spear does something awesome and cinematic, and she kills the demon. Or would you want that to still be in English? What's your thought?
I think it's to the audience, really.
Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna make a great speech in Chinese, and your audience doesn't understand Chinese, it's gonna come off as awkward, and nobody's gonna understand what the hell you're saying.
That too. I personally would think it would be cool because psychologically, when you're in a situation where you're high adrenaline, you actually will revert to your first language.
True.
So if that person's language is Mandarin, then yeah, that's actually technically psychologically accurate. But at the same time, it still plays again to like not every Chinese is not just Mandarin. And that's, and it would depend again, if you fully research, is this person like Han Chinese or something? Like like I said, I speak Mandarin, I speak Cantonese, and I also know Taiwanese, and that's all Chinese. And I think personally, it might just be, it's really hard. It's really hard. It's definitely a conversation that it's very much ongoing, is that having that can be a little bit more detrimental because it becomes more like, oh, only Mandarin is the Chinese language, instead of like, oh, and that kind of stuff. So
I see. So it becomes very polarizing, in a sense. Yeah, especially when you mentioned 3 of the major languages that I'm aware of, and I've heard there's just thousands of dialects.
Oh yeah.
And different regional
Chinese
accents. Yeah. I mean, I don't know much about Japanese language. I know that there are different forms of it, writing, and the sounds, and of course different regionals and different dialects, and it's kind of funny when you see anime done in English how they're taking hints from the Japanese and going, all right, so this is the country part of Japan, so this character has to sound like a redneck, which is such a weird like localization trope. You see all the time, like, well, there's this one dude who shows up and he's all like, "Sup, bro? I'm the surfer dude." It's like, why is he the surfer dude? And Japan's like, well, he lives by the coast, so you know. And it's like, what? You live by the coast. No one in Virginia has a surfer boy accent. If they do, they're posers. But that's just us trying our best and doing so with crib notes and no understanding. Okay, cool. So using words, idioms, metaphors, important, awesome. Want to make sure to cover that. I think this has been really, really awesome. Thank you so much, Eunice, and thank you, Michael, for really opening yourselves up and just putting it out there. Because I know sometimes, like with everything going on right now, it can be kind of scary to be like, but our people, you know what I mean? Let's go back to the chat, see if there's any other questions, comments. Going back to the accent thing, Scups just says, it feels weird. Let's say, hold on, I want to make sure I quote him correctly. Thanks for taking my awkward question. The accent being absent feels weird, but I don't ever feel comfortable. I guess calling him back to that in tones like I would with Scots, Welsh, or Norse people. Yeah. Astral Hellbender is asking if the frog in a well metaphor is similar to the allegory of Plato's cave.
Well, the thing is, it's like, oh, I actually don't know how old this idiom is, and I think that's just, it probably is not an allegory. I think it's where like cultures will like create similar things without actually interacting. You know how every culture has a myth, a flood myth. There you go. Like the flood story. Every culture has that. Every culture will have, for some reason, every culture has like a habit to build pyramids. Even in Chinese culture, there's pyramids. And it's not because they interact, but I think it's because you have like these all culturally like, or not just like these items that, like a frog. Every country, almost every country has a frog, and therefore they have their own things. Frogs usually will live in the similar habitat in all different like continents. So it probably just accidentally like just, it's a coincidence that it like sounds like they're like allegories, but they're actually individually developed.
I think you make a very good point. I think there's also something common and interesting to pick up that we have 12,000 years so far written of Chinese history and culture. I mean, obviously, not in 2 pages, but mentioning the 8,000 oral years and 4,000 written years, and that's just of one country on one continent across this entire world. Maybe it's safe to say within 20,000 years, someone had the same idea somewhere else. Doesn't make it the same idea. It's just a happenstance, right?
It's like how like in every culture, usually a cat is referred to as like meow or mao, or because of the like things like be called the same. It's like, why is every culture like mother, ma, or like, you know, mummy? It's developed separately, but some reason it.
Actually, I want to go back to that cat thing. Oh God, they did a spot in a show called Kim's Convenience that I absolutely love, where Appa, you know, a Korean store owner, and his friend who's you know, Indian, they're talking about the different ways that different cultures kind of call how a cat makes its sound, like meow or meow, or, you know, now, or, you know, different. They actually they went through a whole gamut. I was like, wow, that's actually really interesting. It was just something that kind of, you know, popped in my head. But really quick, I want to jump into this this comment that was made a while back from Reap Psyche. So I've gotten in a couple arguments with a friend about the word Oriental. I've always heard it was okay to use an object like a rug or a vase as something, but not for culture, race, or a person. He said that it's bad to use no matter what for anything. Neither of us are of any Asian descent, so it seems like two idiots arguing on something that we didn't have any firm stance on. Is it actually okay to use for an object, or is it just best to totally remove it from your vocabulary?
I personally think totally remove it, because the word in itself has such a negative connotation now that even using it referring to inanimate objects still carries a stereotype in itself. Like if you want to use it, if you use it as like if it slips out, they'll be like, oh, an oriental rug. That's fine. But if you can't, I personally, like, as I said, I can't speak for everyone, but personally, I think we should slowly kind of
phase it out.
Yeah, phase it out.
Yeah. Actually, recently, this is kind of what we said before, and also kind of we're going off on a new tangent. Recently, I was part of a discussion with a group of friends of mine who are doing an event called with a neo-dystopia or something. It's basically kind of like Wasteland Weekends, but out in the desert, and the theme is cyberpunk. It's one of the same people, honestly. That we were discussing how we're gonna make our camp, our theme and everything, and our meeting was basically throwing ideas out there of the theme of the camp. I instead did something where, hey, if we're gonna use anything Asian inspired, because Asian stuff is very intertwined these days with cyberpunk. And and there are cyberpunk games like Cyberpunk Red, Shadowrun right now. That's out. Don't use Asian stuff as a backdrop or a prop.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty telling, because honestly, if you want to go a little bit into the history of cyberpunk, if you don't mind, a lot of modern day cyberpunk, especially when when Blade Runner first came out with Harrison Ford, it was a lot about Western anxiety about the East, aka Yellow Peril, and it stems from Orientalism with Western society and its perceptions of Asia, as well as fear, which resulted in real world things like we talked about before, the Chinese Exclusion Act, and also the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. Mm-hmm. And while the cyberpunk genre is very much based on human fears and experiences in the 70s and the 80s of American economic fear of Japan taking over the global economy.
Yeah.
I think it's also interesting when you see things like with Shadowrun, how they ingrain it into the mechanics too. I think we talked a little bit before when we were in the green room about like how Shadowrun, every warrior in Shadowrun is a street samurai. What?
Yeah.
Also, if you even see the new video game, Cyberpunk, like I think, let's just hope and assume there was a desire for a homogeneity is not the right word, but shall we say a normalization of the blending of all cultures, so that it all lumps together into one future aesthetic, which I don't think anyone actually wants. But regardless, one of the things I found was very interesting is a lot of the people who were like runners and gunners in Shadowrun have a top knot.
Yeah.
And it's like that. Do you know what that's about? Like, nah, dude.
It's honestly, it's building off from what Cyberpunk, Shadowrun, and all that stuff was in the past to today, its place in the world. It's just the continued deployment of Asian culture as set dressing is best. If you're, like I said before, if you're going to use Asia as an aesthetic or a motif, I implore you to not use it as a prop or a background, but to tell an actual story that incorporates it as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question for Eunice.
Yes.
You have not played a tabletop RPG yet, right?
No.
Okay, so I think if we could, we should maybe consider changing that. Hey everyone, that conversation has been tremendous. It was a lot of fun learning so much, but we are not done yet. This video has been a little long, so we're going to release this in 2 parts. So please, after watching this, do yourself a favor, do us a favor, do everyone a favor with this dialogue, and please go check out part 2. But without further ado, we must say our goodbyes. So I will start with the man, as always, Mr. Michael Powell. Tell us who you are and where we can find you on that sweet, sweet internet.
Well, as always, I am Michael Powell, or you can find me all over the internet on my social medias, which is at Mr. Kapow, that's MrKapao, or my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Michael Powell Does Stuff, because I do a lot of stuff, like my YouTube channel, which is called Fantastic Tales of Adventure. And on Thursdays, on the Toyzilla Network channel at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I'm part of a show called Toyzilla Live, where we talk about toy news and etc. And I'm going to have also another toy show coming up, because you know what? I'm crazy and I do a lot of stuff.
Michael, you got to be good to yourself. You do so good. Give yourself some time. My name is PJ McGaw. You can find me all over the internet at pj.mcgaw, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I'm fine. Let's have a good time. When I'm not here with the man himself, Mr. Michael Powell, Tuesdays, 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard. You can find me here on the same Nat channel, different Nat time, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for our Pathfinder 2nd Edition homebrew show, Edge of Legend, as the war rages on. Let's see if they can survive that boss fight they're about to go walking into. Some further exciting news. If you guys remember hearing last time, I will be doing a charity event for Jasper's Game Day. I have a table opening up. You can come potentially be a part of my game or come watch the game. All proceeds go to suicide prevention and awareness. Jasper'sGameDay.com. Look for yours truly. The show will be May 9th, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we have some other cool, exciting surprises coming down the road, but we can't tell you now because then it wouldn't be a surprise. And without further ado, last but absolutely not least, please, Eunice, tell us who you are and where we can find you on that sweet, sweet internet and all the other awesome stuff.
Well, thank you for having me. I am Eunice, but I also go by Yaya, and I have a YouTube channel, which is JadePalaceYaMingo, but you can find me as JadePalaceYaYa, where I do educational videos on Chinese history, tradition, and culture. I also do stream on Twitch as MyHamachi, which is MyHamachi, and I stream on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And that one's a little bit more chill. That one you can chat with me and just, hang out.
Awesome. Again, awesome to have you here. Can't wait to see you in part 2. Wink, wink. And everyone else watching this, please give part 2 a shot because the dialogue isn't done yet. We're having so much fun. Some great things to look forward to in that one as well. So until then, we'll see you same Nat time, same Nat channel. Be safe, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.